you're looking to add a perennial foliage to your farm, you should stick around for this video because we're going to be talking all about this gorgeous perennial foliage called Baptisia. So let's just dive right in. Baptisia, which is right here, or Baptisia as I've heard it said, is a long-lived perennial. It has this really great foliage. It's very tall, it's very robust, it's very strong. I have been farming and growing cut flowers for 6 years now on my flower farm in West Michigan. And one of the things that I've started to lean really heavily into in the last several years was Baptisia. And I planted this Baptisia 4 Augusts ago. This is what it looks like today. So you can tell it's really big and strong. And it was one of the perennials that I heard Dave Dallian recommend that people invest in. Like, he usually recommends peonies #1, and Baptisia was the second one that he recommended that you start growing. So I follow a lot of Dave's advice, so I started growing Baptisia as well. One of the reasons that I love Baptisia is because it's a perennial. So in the winter, you cut all the way back to the ground, and every single year in the spring, it comes bursting forth from the ground as brand new spikes. So it all regrows in one season. And then it goes all the way back to the ground and comes up as fresh new spikes from the ground. And it just springs out of the ground in early spring, like in April. And then it grows very quickly to this height and sends up large, tall flower spike. For me in West Michigan, zone 6, it's like late May, early June. It sends up these really big, tall, gorgeous flower spikes. But this is not grown particularly for the flower, but rather for the foliage, and I'll get into that later. The flowers are great for cutting as well, and they give you a really great spike at a difficult time in the season. So this is for us, like, you know, my summer stuff is not ready yet. It gives me a great spike flower in the early spring. The tricky part of it is that the flowers are hard to predict when they're going to bloom because it's a spring flower, right? So it's very dependent on the weather. You're only able to harvest them for about 7 to 10 days. So they do not have a very long harvest window. They don't store long in a cooler. So you're only selling them for like maybe 2 weeks. They're on your inventory, and that 2 weeks is difficult to predict because every spring it's going to be slightly different based on the weather. I do sell them as the flowers, and they're great, but I don't sell tons and tons of them, and that's okay because the real cash crop is the foliage, which you can see here, which is lovely and wonderful. And so what I do is I cut the flowers to order. So if people order them, I cut them. I don't cut extra. I don't try and push the sales. And then I let the crop go for a couple of weeks. And then what I do is I test the foliage to see if it will hold and be strong enough, because it has to be mature. Like, the tips have to be more mature. And when it's really young in the spring, sometimes that foliage wilts much more easily. It actually is very wilty, which we'll talk about, but you have to wait for it to be mature enough. So I wait a couple of weeks, test it, and then I start listing the foliage on my inventory list for sales. And the cool thing about it is this is now the last day of July, so we're almost into August, and this foliage still looks great, and I'm still selling it, and I've been selling it for 6 weeks. And I sold the flowers, you know, for a couple weeks before that. And then the other thing is then their seed pods start to dry, which you can see here. This one is starting to do it. And so then it produces these really cool seed pods that are green initially, and then they turn black. And some people just sell the seed pods as well. So this one perennial will give you essentially at least 2, if not 3 crops. It gives you the flowers, it gives you the foliage all summer long. And then in the fall, you can harvest these seed pods. I don't really sell the seed pods separately. I just sell the whole foliage, and the seed pods go with it. And if the florists want it, that's great. I don't really sell them separately, but maybe I will this year, but I don't typically do it. It at least gives you 2 crops, if not 3, making it just a really double duty perennial. I mean, who doesn't want a flower that's going to give you 2 things, right? The flowers are short-lived, but you can plant different varieties that have slightly different bloom time. So that can kind of give you, like, you know, this color of Baptisia this week, and then this color, and then this week that color. So you can kind of spread it out, but you're not going to get the same color because they're all different varieties. And I've actually seen some conversations on the AFCFG Facebook page recently about specifically having different varieties of Baptisia to stagger the bloom time. And basically it was like you can stagger them a little bit, but it's not really going to make this big difference. So I don't really try and do that, but I definitely do have some that bloom later, particularly this variety blooms ahead of my yellow variety over there, but only by like 5 days or something, maybe a week. They do overlap for sure. But the flowers are great. They're these tall spike flowers. I harvest them kind of like you would harvest any other spike flower when like a third of the florets are starting to open on the stem, sort of like you would do a snapdragon, and then I sell them that way, and they're great. The one problem with this crop, the one major problem, is it wilts. So the foliage wilts. You have to harvest it very specifically and treat it and do certain things to it to prevent it from wilting. So it is a little fussy. You have to figure it out. You have to know how to do it, but you can do it. What I do is I harvest it first thing. Like, it is the very first crop that I harvest, and I harvest it into deep buckets of water with hydrator in them from Chrysol, the hydrator solution. So not the Chrysol #2, the hydrator, and then that helps them drink up the water, and then I immediately get them in the coolers. I mean, I just had someone ask me kind of for last minute Baptisia, and I was like, I can't cut it for you and sell it to you. It's gonna wilt. They're asking you mid-morning and they say, can you have this today? I just tell them no, because it's not gonna do well. It's gonna wilt. Anyway, so that's the tip with that. Harvest it first thing in the morning, hydrator, get it in the cooler. I don't go harvest all these other crops, bring out my little gorilla cart with buckets, and then I put it right in the cooler, and I'm pretty much harvesting this to order. I don't really harvest extra of it because I can harvest it for so long, and so I don't wanna waste it. What I do is I harvest about a third to half the plant, depending on how robust it is. That's pretty easy to tell. You can look at the base of the plant, how many stems are coming up out of the ground, and then I just be like, oh, I've harvested, half of these or less than half, or oh, I need to back off of this one. So you can't tell, but this patch looks super full, and I've harvested hundreds of stems off of this Baptisia this season. So it's just really a great foliage. And then the different varieties can be a little different. So this is a little bit different than my goldfinch. This is one of the blue varieties, and I actually like this foliage better. It's bigger and more robust, and I actually think it wilts less. Kind of my own observation. So I actually have florists that really love this for weddings. I had one order 9 bunches for a wedding and other things, and they're just so impressed with it because it's massive. It fills the bucket. It just gives them really great coverage, so you can sell it for a pretty good price. And then they just keep coming back to it, and they love it. Speaking of selling to florists, that's what I do from my farm. Most of my product goes to florists. I have a free guide called Tips for Selling Flowers to Florists. So if you're interested in that, I would grab that from the description, and then you can have it to give you a place to start on your journey to selling to florists. Okay, so let's talk about the growing. It's a perennial, zone 4 to 9. It's a long-lived perennial. Like, from everything I read, it just lives for a long time, years and years and years. When I plant something in August or in the first summer, I kind of count that as year 0. And then from there, like, so the first year would be the following spring. So the first year, I don't expect much from this crop at all. In fact, I would expect a really small, unimpressive plant with like maybe 1 to 3 stems that are short and not very strong. And then the second year they get a little better, maybe 5 or 6 stems. Some varieties do better. This variety did pretty good in its second year. I harvested some and sold it, but not every variety is going to give you harvestable stems that second year. Then it's the third year that they really started to get more robust, and the fourth year, this is even better, bulkier and just really strong and sending up more and more and more stems. They're clump forming, and the clumps get bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I do to plant this is I plant it typically into landscape fabric with decent sized holes the first year, and then in year 2 I pull up the landscape fabric. Otherwise you're gonna have to keep making the holes in the landscape fabric bigger and bigger and bigger and burning them bigger every spring, which is kind of pointless, and then you almost have nothing left. So I pull up the landscape fabric and put down wood chips to mulch for weed prevention. And honestly, this stuff springs up out of the ground so quickly in the spring. I usually weed it once and then I don't weed it. There are weeds in here, but the Baptisia is definitely out competing the weeds. That's been a really great way that I've planted a lot of perennials, and is to use landscape fabric for 1 to 2 years and then pull it up and use wood chips to mulch to prevent the weeds. It has average water needs. It's clump forming. It is a North American native, so that's kind of cool. I like that. I don't use any netting. You do not need netting on this. It does not go down. We had like a tornado and this stood firm. Really a low maintenance perennial once it's established. Traditionally, it's like the blue color, which I was just talking to a very knowledgeable florist this spring that I've worked with several years, and I was telling her about my yellow Baptisia, and she was like, Baptisia is yellow? I didn't know it was anything but blue. So educate your florist, they may not know that it comes in other colors. So the varieties that I have is American Goldfinch, which is a yellow, like a pretty bright yellow. And then I have Australias, which is kind of like the more traditional blue color, which is this, what I'm standing in front of. From what I've grown, this is like the best foliage and a really great blue flower. And then I have a variety called Vanilla Cream, which is fine, but I thought it was more creamy, like more white. And it really is yellow, like a pale yellow, or at least it was for me. And I already have a yellow, so I was like, oh, now I have more yellow. And then the next variety I have is called Pink Lemonade, which is a pink and yellow bicolor. I was like, how? Okay, I have a lot of yellow Baptisia. I don't know that I would grow all three of those varieties. This is the Vanilla Cream. I did harvest a couple of flowers off of this, and this is more robust. These have like 6 to 8 stems on them, a much smaller foliage. This is its second year. This is the Pink Lemonade right here, which it's actually like a pretty good looking one. My yellow variety, and the stems are pretty different. They're not as big and full, but they're still good. They have these like much taller spikes. You can see the seed pods coming up here, so they're kind of crazy. And you can actually like literally plant these seeds and grow more. They have other really cool colors. They have like a chocolate and a mocha. I've seen a blush. They have other bicolors out there. They've got like a burgundy. It comes in a lot of really neat varieties. They've been doing a lot of breeding with it, and there's just some really cool colors. I am adding more. I had some die off, like die back, like some of mine that I planted didn't all grow to fruition. And so I'm trying to fill in the holes. I'm looking over there because that's where my younger Baptisia is. I added a couple of varieties and they didn't have them available yet. So I'm getting them next spring. I already have them ordered from Walter's Gardens in Zeeland, Michigan, which is a perennial supplier. You can also get them through Ball or get them from Walter's through Ball Horticulture. So that's where I get them. I wanted more of this for the foliage. I really am like almost sold out of this foliage. So, because you have to leave the stems so they rejuvenate the roots. You can't take all of the foliage. You have to leave some. Gotta leave some. I want to show you what I would do with this stem. First of all, I just cut this from the ground, literally at the ground, and I cut it, and this is the stem. So it's very branchy, very branchy. You can see here's that seed pod from the flower, right? It's turning black because it's almost August. So I would not just cut this and plunk it in water. You're going to want to strip down some of the side shoots. So I would strip off this and this and like this little guy, this guy. Okay, so I'd probably leave something like this. This one's kind of big. I might take off some of this like this. So I would leave it more like this. So I've taken off, you know, a bit of it, and this is almost like I'm almost feel like I should take this off, but it'll probably be okay. So this would be the stem that you sell, and I sell them in a 10 stem bunch. Now, these are perfectly good other side shoot stems. I don't tend to sell these, but if you did wholesale, like these are probably not super worth it. But if you were doing a wedding, or doing retail bouquets at your roadside stand or selling it at the farmer's market, these are totally tall enough. What are these, 816? These are like 24 inches tall. So you could totally use these side shoots for other smaller things, or you could sell them as 2 different grades. I've thought about that, but that's just so much communication. It's so confusing. Occasionally I will sell the side shoots when I have some really great ones, but usually I'm just selling my one main bunch. They are pretty much all tall, like tall enough for cutting, but like this is clearly, well, I don't know, like 4 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall. So this is a really great variety for cutting and for the foliage. In summary, if you're looking to add a really great summer perennial foliage to your farm, or just looking to add a really great perennial, I highly recommend that you look into Baptisia. Now remember, like the first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, the third year it leaps. Like that really is true. Like it's gonna take 2, if not 3 years to really get cuttable, usable, sellable stems in any kind of quantity from this perennial. We talked about yarrow 2 videos ago. It's not like, oh, you plant this from seed and you have flowers to sell. That's not the case with Baptisia, but it's still worth it. It's definitely proved to be a good investment for me. It gives you a great spring spike flower when you don't have a lot of spike. It gives you great perennial foliage for weeks and weeks and weeks that you can harvest off of in the summer to sell. Remember, it's a little fussy to hydrate. You got to treat it correctly to get it to hydrate and not wilt on you. But it really is easy to grow. It gets better and better with time. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out my video on Solomon seal, which is a great spring perennial foliage, completely different than this, but also just a really great perennial foliage for your farm. I highly recommend that you check out that video. And until next time, I hope you're having a great time farming.